Between 1861 and the early 1960s, more than 25 million Italians left Italy in search of a better life. The majority emigrated to the Americas. Presently, there are about 65 million Italian descendants spread out in the United States, Argentina, and Brazil. An important exhibition organized in Naples at the Suor Orsola Benincasa University by the Roma Mediterraneo Foundation recounts the history of this immense exodus, which scholars consider the most massive migration of a single people in all of history. The show, conceived by Francesco Nicotra, who is Director of Special Programs in Italy for the National Italian-American Foundation, starts off with the sailing ships of the emigrants. Until the early 1900s, transatlantic crossings were a veritable nightmare. Third-class passengers often traveled in inhuman conditions, while first-class passengers had access to cabins and to luxurious salons. A cross-section of the liner Duilio, which began sailing in 1923, vividly shows the difference between first class and third class. But the Duilio was already a modern liner, unlike the ships of the 1800s and the early 1900s that transported hundreds of thousands of destitute immigrants to America. People departed from Genoa, Naples, or Palermo, knowing that perhaps they would never return. Many people had to sell their homes or small croplands to pay for their fares. It was also very complicated to obtain passports for emigration. Men could not depart if they had not served in the military forces. Many Italian churches are replete with votive offerings of emigrants who survived shipwrecks, which unfortunately happened frequently. Overcrowded quarters and bad nutrition caused many epidemics aboard the ships. For many, the American dream ended in the vortex of the Atlantic Ocean. At the end of the 1800s, the Statue of Liberty welcomed the immigrants to America. Then, at Ellis Island, there were medical examinations and control of documents. The mental aptitude of the immigrants was gauged through puzzles, which were very often complicated for illiterate peasants who were exhausted and disoriented. However, on average, only 2% of the immigrants were rejected. A new life started in the Italian districts, the Little Italies, where fellow countrymen already lived. Strong family ties were of utmost importance for Italians in America. Parishes with Italian clergy became a focal point for Italians, and on Sundays, all met to mingle as it was common for them to do in their hometowns in Italy. Italians had solid principles, and they were eager to work. They accepted to do the most rigorous of jobs. Hundreds of thousands worked in agriculture, in mines, constructing roads and railways, in the construction of large cities and transportation systems. One can easily say that 50% of America was constructed by Italian labor. Although Italians were often poorly paid and discriminated against, they never wavered. They wanted to improve their lives and their families' lives and send their children to university, and many accomplished their dreams. Le copielle, small musical scores of the songs of the emigrants, recount the atmosphere of Little Italy and also speak of tragic events like the unjust sentence against Sacco and Vanzetti and the dire economic crisis of 1929. At the outset of the First World War, well over 300,000 young Italo-Americans crossed the Atlantic Ocean to fight and defend Italy. Fiorello LaGuardia, the future mayor of New York, was among these men. The grotesque declaration of war on the United States by Mussolini was an absolute shock for the Italo-Americans. 1,200,000 Italo-Americans were drafted by the American Armed Forces. Many fought in Italy and were welcomed as liberators. Many came to know the country of origin of their parents and their grandparents. Sergeant John Basilone was the Marine who received the most medals during the Second World War. Alas, he was killed only days before the end of the warfare. During the aftermath of the war, there were innumerable successful Americans of Italian origin in all different fields and walks of life. Names such as Joe DiMaggio, the famous baseball champion, Frank Sinatra, and film director Frank Capra were very well known by all Americans. These were only among the first men and women with Italian names to become famous. There is Geraldine Ferraro, the first woman candidate for Vice President of the United States. Ella Grasso, the first woman governor of an American state, Connecticut. The first American saint was also Italo-American, Mother Francesca Cabrini, canonized by the Church in 1949. At present, there are well over 26 million Italo-Americans. Their most important association is the National Italian-American Foundation, which has chapters all over the United States. One of its foremost objectives is to maintain cultural ties between Americans of Italian origin and Italy. Perhaps this is the most commendable homage to the memory of the courage that their ancestors showed many years ago in crossing the Atlantic Ocean to pursue the American dream.
Mamma mia, dammi 100